it's anonymous, it doesn't allow the same respect behind the journalism, and that's one of the things that allowed me to want to get into media after playing or while I was playing, because I felt like sometimes when people covered the games, it was personal. Like, I would talk about this coach because his assistant is my boy, or I would talk great about this player because we have the same agent. Like, it was always something. Or the name calling. Like, you could say a player can't get it done, or he missed his shots, or, you know, but when you're on TV and you're saying, oh, he's a scrub, or, you know, or he sucks, like, that's a little bit different, because you're talking about somebody with a brand, that's a grown man, that has kids, and their kids see and hear that as well. You know how brutal kids can be. Ah, your dad sucks. So it works both ways.
My name is Patrick. I'm from Basketball Feed. My question is for Jim. With all the fragmentation going on, you think blogs about individual players is what's next?
Yeah, you know, it's a great question. We just had a conversation with a few other bloggers about that after the last panel, and my opinion on it is that's something that people want, and it's just a difficult thing to scale in business terms and writing terms. You know, I'm going to have to talk about SB Nation for 1 second here, because at SBNation.com we have this thing called Story Stream. And I encourage you to check it out. What it does is when we write a story about a player or an article or a topic, you know, a news story, because there's so much stuff going on in the world, in the media sphere, we effectively make a blog out of every single story and every single player by aggregating, you know, what ESPN had to say about it, what, you know, Ball Don't Lie had to say about it, and kind of weave it together into a thread, effectively make a blog out of that story or out of that player. So yeah, I absolutely do think that the next wave is to get more and more fragmented, more and more micro, not only about players, but even about stories or about games. You know, actually it already happens with game threads and live blogging. That's a live blog is a blog that disappears after the event. And you know, we're doing the same thing on SBNation.com with just stories, or, you know, in the tech world we call them memes, right? And we have 7 different updates on one meme, on one URL, or permalink in the technical terms. And so, short answer is yes. The long answer is I don't think it takes the form of one person devoting their career to following one player. That just doesn't scale up.
Question for Rob. ESPN has, you know, a lot of blogging reach to the league, but the approach is different seemingly from sport to sport. You started with acquiring Sherbrooke and hiring Henry Abbott, and that's the NBA approach. But then you hire divisional bloggers for the NFL, you hire conference bloggers for college football, and now you're kind of mimicking Sherbrooke for MLB with Rob Matter's Sweet Spot and Sweet Spot Network. So why the discrepancy, and what's the future?
Well, all of what you're describing has happened within really the last 2 years. And I would tell you that it's a matter of evolution. You know, in part, excuse me. You know, we went to Henry because he's just big in space and he knows it's cold. And he's been instrumental in helping us understand its possibilities. We went to the NFL approach in large part because we just couldn't go out and just hire them. Coach right away, and we wanted to figure out a good way to meet communities of interest. We wanted to try something. And when we were doing the NFL, we did college at the same time. So we just chose big conferences and we thought we'd try that. We're a year and a half into it. Because we're going to be in this for the long haul. And then we, you know, launched Sherbrooke Network, which Henry worked on the entire time into the company, trying to figure out the right way to make that happen. And you know, that's got a season under its belt. So, I mean, we're really early into figuring out exactly how to do this. We went to what Rob is doing as, you know, evolution of what Rob was doing, and we had pretty high hopes for what we'll do with Major League Baseball once we get around to the next season. But again, you know, we're we're entering into this with a lot of different models just to figure out what works for our audience, because our audience is different from the audiences that you have in many ways. I mean, there's an intense grouping of people, intense sports fans who come to us and go to you. There are a lot of casual sports fans who come to us, some go to you, and then there's this big other area of folk fans who get interested at certain times of the year, certain events. And so we have this array of people that we're trying to serve. At the same time, I mean, we're also helping ESPN overall understand the power of blogs. And I would also submit, and you probably all recognize this because of blog buzz and other features, that has changed dramatically over the last couple of years also. I think that, I said this earlier today, what we know internally that hasn't really been discussed a lot externally is that we had a point of view on who we hired for the NFL Blog Network, mostly because we were doing two things. One was we were trying to figure out ways for us to introduce blogs that had a level of access and an array of sources that could enable those people doing those blogs to appear across all media, seamlessly. So one of the things we did right when we launched the NFL Blog Network is we had those folks on our NFL draft coverage right out of the box. And they kind of had to find what their rhythm was through the course of the summer, and then by the time the season started, they all kind of knew what they needed to do. We also had, and I talked about this morning, so I apologize for repeating myself, a blogger boot camp where Henry came down and just told everybody how to be a good blogger. And I used this example earlier. There were people who didn't know whether they should respond to emails they get from their audience because they were coming from backgrounds, not all of them. I mean, Sando was blogging, Mosley was blogging, but some of the people we hired who were good reporters who we believed could make the transition didn't know how to respond to an audience. I mean, we had to train them. And I think that, ESPN being ESPN, we were really starting from a different point than any individual who decides that he or she has the passion, the drive, the interest to start a blog, find an audience, and satisfy that audience. We were starting in the middle of the machine, and so we spent a lot of time talking about every candidate. And I think that regardless of whether it's bloggers who joined us through True Hoop Network, who just came straight from the blogosphere, or people we've hired from newspaper backgrounds or other backgrounds, everybody, because they're doing it with ESPN, has had to find their way. We've had to find the right way to make sure that we're getting stuff to the audience, find the right way to make sure that folks are being represented in other media, make sure that radio knows that there's somebody available who knows this audience. It just, I'm not asking for anybody's sympathy. It's nice to be as large as we are, but it's also complicated being as large as we are. So, I would just tell you that the models are all different because it's early yet, because we have pretty high aspirations for how we can continue and deepen this connection. And, I think that in addition, I think we've done a pretty good job of making sure people know what else is out there. All of our bloggers are supposed to be good citizens of the blogosphere, not corporate citizens, good citizens of the blogosphere, and make sure that there's good content out there to let people know it. But, part of the reason I'm here is to, to continue the dialogue and to learn how we're doing, because if we're going to play in this space, it's important to know who we're playing with.
And I just want to say thank you for being here, Jim and Jalen. And also I just want to say on behalf of everyone, let's thank the HHR guys for putting this all together.